And I'll tell you why. It's not your money. None of it. That's not your money. None of it. He just lets you keep 90%. Finances, and then the second one, starting in February for about 6 weeks, we're going to concentrate on relationships. In between people, whether you're single, married, divorced, remarried, widowed, relationships. Because if our finances are in order and our relationships are in order, we can become healthy people, we can become a healthy church, and we can continue to have growth. But if we continue to have growth without being healthy, then we will implode because we won't have the infrastructure to make it work. So for the next 10 or 12 weeks, it's about money and people. And for some of you going, here he goes again, I knew it, I haven't been in church in a year. Here's preacher talking about money. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about stewardship. And I'm talking about a perspective. And the perspective is this. You're outnumbered. God's plan will work. That's why we're talking about it. It's called investing in futures. Your future, our future, the future of your kids, the future of our community. Last week, Colin talked to you about being people of significance. If Friends Community Church closed, would anybody care? Well, we want that answer to be, oh yeah, they would. Because we're investing in the future of East Orlando. Not just in your finances, not just the finances of this church. In 2009, we have to win. We have to win, and I'll tell you why. Those people right there are counting on us. And if you haven't seen that group, go to the one that's just beside that. Those people right there are counting on us to win. They're looking for someone who can win. And here's my point. We have to commit ourselves to defeating the giant. Just like David. And to wander around and pretend like the giant doesn't exist is to admit defeat before we even get started. And everybody's afraid of this giant. Nobody wants to talk about it. But I'm not afraid to talk about it because if we pretend it doesn't exist, then all it does is stick our head in the sand and people wander away thinking that the church isn't relevant. Well, I'm not afraid to talk about it. The economy is by far the number one worry in America. By far. It was what swung the election. The economy is a big deal. My generation has never seen days like this, and my children's generation has certainly never seen days that could be coming. There are people talking about that we could be headed into recession. There are people talking about we could be headed into a depression. There are people that say by the time August comes, your gas will be 90 cents a gallon. All because of the economy. And for you and I to pretend like it's not real is silly. Because we're all thinking about it, we're all worried about it. And God would want you and I to be generous people. Would you agree? When I got phone calls at Christmas, hey pastor, my family needs power bill money. It would be really great if we could just cut them a check, wouldn't it? It'd be great for the people that you know, that you could just walk up to your friends who needed something and just write them a check. God would want us to be generous, and I believe you would want to be a generous person as well. I want to be a generous person. I want to be able to help people. But I also know this, it's hard to be generous when the noose is tightened around your neck and your neck's already blue. You can't breathe. And so the goal is to help you figure out a way to breathe. Not only that, I think the number one reason that people aren't generous is because we're scared. We're just scared. We don't know what's going to happen. And so we're pigeonholing our money, we're pigeonholing our time, we're pigeonholing our resources because we don't know what's going to happen. And some of that is smart. Some of that is very smart. Cut back on the things you don't have to have, only have the things you need. Some of that's very smart. But the reason we're scared is because we don't understand God's plan. And God's plan doesn't make sense. I'm going to tell you right now, God's plan for the way to handle your finances does not make sense. Just like getting rid of 19,000 guys to go fight a battle doesn't make any sense. But I will tell you this, the strength isn't in the plan, the strength is in the person who created the plan. Amen. Another reason that people don't give is because we can't afford it. We can't afford it. If I was to sit down and say, do you know what, you need to write a check to the church every month for $400. Some of you going, I don't have $400. I know that. I've lived that way. I know how that feels. It's not that we don't want to do it, it's that we can't. Because the trade is my power bill or give it to God. I understand that. And so our goal here at Friends is to help you find a way to dig yourself out of debt and to get yourself on a plan that can create freedom so that you can breathe. God has a proven plan for your finances. And those of you that are worried, and those of you that are scared, I completely understand. And I don't want you to be afraid to talk to me about this. I understand. But I will tell you, God has a plan for your finances. I asked my dad this question this week, and my dad's been in ministry, my goodness, almost 40 years. And I asked him about this particular issue. And my dad's comment was, you know what? I have people who come in and they want to see me about when their marriage is in trouble or when their kids are sick or when decisions they're making about careers. He says, I've never had anybody walk in my office and go, Pastor Tom, I just received a large inheritance. What should I do with it? God has a plan. And when we honor God with the plan, there's success. When we live outside the plan, you may survive. You may survive, but God has a better way. This is what I mean. In 6:13 it says this. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Doesn't that sound like what people are saying about our economy? If we're God's chosen people, which by the way we're not, we're Americans. Just clarifying it. Why has all this happened to us? What happened to all these wonders and deeds that our forefathers told us about? Well, I'll tell you what's happened, is I'm not exactly convinced that God's really honored by the way we've lived as Americans. I'm not sure God is really pleased with the way we do business. Capitalism is all about me making money, even if I got to take advantage of people. I'm sorry, I'll just start a Ponzi scheme and make $50 billion. God's not really pleased with that. He can't be, because the center of capitalism ultimately is me, not him. Think about it. So maybe God's not so honored by the way that we live. God always has a plan, and the answer to God's plan is always the same. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if it's your marriage. I don't care if it's your career. I don't care if it's your education. I don't care if it's your money. I don't care if it's your sex life. I don't care whatever habit you got. The answer to God's plan is always the same. Gideon took 10 men and did what the Lord told him. That's the answer. That's God's plan. It's called obedience. Actually, it's called submission. That's always God's answer. I already told you. Hello. God waits for us to become people of obedience. Don't care what your situation is, the answer is always the same. There's nothing wrong with your life that a little bit of obedience can't cure. There's nothing wrong with this church that a little bit of obedience can't cure. There's nothing wrong with America that a little bit of obedience can't cure, because God just waits for us to get our lives in line with what He said. And He's patient enough to do that. When you and I go into battle, having more men isn't as important as having God's blessing. True? Wouldn't you be better off with God and 20,000 less guys, as opposed to having 20,000 more guys doing it your way? Well, wouldn't it also make sense then that going into battle doesn't mean you need more cash, it means you need more God? And I can't explain this to you. I was a financial advisor. God's system does not add up. I don't care how you do it. You can add it over here and add it over here. It does not add up, but it works. I can't explain it, but it works. And it's because 90% of my money with God goes farther than 100% of my money without God. That's all I can tell you. That's all I can tell you. I only got one amen. The goal for the next 4 weeks is your freedom. For your freedom. When Sherry and I moved to Florida, about 3.5 years ago, we had been out of work for a while, and I made money out speaking, and somehow or other, every once in a while people would give us some money, and somehow or other we stayed up to date on all of our bills. But in the process of needing money, I got this guy who offered to help me from Capital One. You see where I'm going with this? By the time we moved to Florida, with some other things we had purchased, some things for our home, and some revolving debt. When I moved to Orlando in, was that 05? Right? Fall of 05? We were $32,000 in revolving debt. $32,000. I had just taken a job at UBS as a financial advisor. I was paying $1,500 a month in credit card payment. And I'll show you the sheet next week. The sheet was about that long with the checklist that I send everybody. So I was spending probably $50 a month in stamps. It was crazy. And I couldn't keep up with it. I started to get behind. And so I did what a lot of people do. I considered filing Chapter 7. But you can't do that when you're a financial advisor because you lose your job. So instead, we got involved with a credit counseling company, and we paid $800 a month, every month, for 39 straight months. We do not have a credit card. We have paid cash for vacations. We've paid cash for clothes. We've paid cash for everything we have done for 3 years and a half.